Well, thanks, Jeff. And this is turning out so far to be an average hurricane season. We would expect the first named storm to be about this time, first hurricane that is. And this system is forecast to be a hurricane in the next 48 hours. Let me show you the large-scale picture and where that tropical depression is right now. That's the low symbol there. It's still a ways from the islands, about 48 hours from the islands. It's moving fairly quickly. Let me zoom in on this and give you the latest information as of 5 p.m. Wind's still only 35 miles per hour, so it's still 5 miles per hour shy of tropical storm. If and when it is named, and we expect it to be named later tonight, it would be Chantal. Moving to the west at 23 miles per hour. That's a very, very fast motion, and that's why we think that there may have to be some tropical storm watches or hurricane watches hoisted later tonight or tomorrow morning, because it's moving very quickly toward the west, toward the central and northern islands. Let's have a look at it right now. Now, it's not looking all that impressive. It hasn't changed much throughout the day, but keep in mind the thunderstorms typically peak in the nighttime hours, so we're expecting this to become a storm within the next 24 hours, and then a hurricane about the time it makes landfall in the islands in about 48 hours. You can see it there moving. Right now, the strongest winds are on the north side of the circulation, so it's sort of asymmetric, and this sort of gives us a time frame. Storm by tomorrow evening, moving through the central and northern islands by Friday as a hurricane, Category 1 hurricane, and then south of Puerto Rico still as a Category 1 hurricane in 72 hours. That's 3 days from now. So we'll keep an eye on this. If you're in the islands, monitor it carefully. This is the time to be watching and be prepared with your hurricane kits if you need to use them. Elsewhere in the tropics, it's relatively quiet. This other tropical wave is now moving through Puerto Rico. The thunderstorms are displaced off to the west of that to the east of that circulation over here. With that happening and the upper level trough associated with it, there's no chance of this developing, but there's still some showers in the northern islands. The remainder of the Gulf of Mexico and Caribbean are very quiet. As a matter of fact, we have a rare event in the Gulf of Mexico. High pressure is down near Key West with westerly winds, not very strong, moving all the way across the Gulf of Mexico. That's more typical of November than it is of August. So very rare event, but we don't see any tropical cyclones forming there. Eastern Pacific, we have some upper-level westerly winds that are still fairly fast in there, keeping check on anything developing there. So we're really way behind in our tropical cyclone activity there. Well, let's see what's going on closer to home with Jeff.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Steve Lyons. Of course, if we do get Chantal, you'll be sure to get the information just about the fastest you can get anywhere right here on the Weather Channel, and we'll let you know where Chantal, if it does indeed form, will be headed. Of course, we do have a depression, and it's probably very close, or maybe over the next 24 hours, to becoming a tropical storm. Earlier today, the fourth tropical depression of the Atlantic hurricane season formed well east of the Windward Islands, but it's moving very quickly, and some watches may have to be issued, if not tonight, then maybe early tomorrow morning. With all the details on this new system and the rest of the tropics, here's Dr. Steve Lyons.
Well, thanks, Jeff, and he is right. When we put watches out, the Hurricane Center puts watches out, that means within 36 hours they expect the conditions to affect the land area. Now, where is our tropical depression right now? Well, it's out in the central Atlantic, and it's moving to the west very quickly. Let me give you the latest statistics on it here from the Hurricane Center at 5 p.m. 12.5 north, 47.2 west. That's about 800 miles east of the Windward Islands. That's a long way mileage-wise, but it's moving 23 miles per hour, and it may be moving a little faster than that the last few hours. Winds are still down at 35 miles per hour. Keep in mind a storm would be 40 miles per hour. Pressure's 1,009 millibars. And we look at the satellite imagery here. The circulation center is sitting at about 12.5 degrees north, right in this area right here. Thunderstorms are still not all that well defined in the circulation, but we expect that to change over the next 24 hours. We expect it to become a storm. You can see the outflow and the high levels of the clouds moving to the southwest and to the northeast. That's an indication it's starting to ventilate itself and that the intensification is fairly likely. Now, where do we expect it to go over the next 24 to 36, 48, 72 hours? Along this track, and keep in mind it's pretty much heading to due west, so if it were to go straight west, it would be very close to Barbados, but we think it's going to take a little more west-northwest track through time. So tropical storm by tomorrow evening, hurricane, Category 1 hurricane, and making landfall somewhere in the islands by Friday evening. Now keep in mind, as we look at the islands, if you're out there as a tourist, here's Barbados and St. Vincent. If it moves straight west, it would be close to these islands. Keep in mind the circulation center is asymmetric. Most of the stronger winds are on the north side. So all the islands should be keeping an eye on this very carefully over the next 24 hours and watch out for tropical storm watches or warnings to be posted in the next 12 hours. Let's get back to Jeff in the studio now.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Steve Lyons, and of course...
Good evening, I'm Paul Goodlow. Time now for Storm Watch here on the Weather Channel. This time of the year, we always start off with a look at the tropics, and we have something brewing tonight, a tropical depression. And let's get the latest information on this from our hurricane expert, Dr. Steve Lyons.
Well, thank you, Paul. And we do have a depression number 4 out in the Atlantic. It's forecast to become a storm later tonight or early tomorrow, and then a hurricane as it makes landfall somewhere in the central or northern Antilles in about 48 hours. Let me show you the location of the circulation. There it is there, moving to the west, and it's moving west very quickly. And we're running out of time relative to watches and warnings. We may actually see some watches or warnings put up later this evening, probably at the 11 o'clock advisory, because it's moving to the west at 23 miles per hour right now, and that speed does not appear to be slowing down much. So it's moving very, very quickly. Winds 35 miles per hour. The current position is about 825 miles east of the Windward Islands. Of course, if you calculate that in there, you get about a 36-hour time frame to landfall. We expect it to slow down a little bit as it approaches land. That's why we expect landfall in about 48 hours. Now, here's the circulation. The low center appears to be back to the east slightly of the thunderstorms. Circulation spinning around in here. But we're starting to see some outflow in the circulation, indicating that it might be slowly developing. When I say slowly, that means slowly, only about 5 to 10 miles per hour every 12 hours. When we look at the water vapor image, you can see some of these feathers of high clouds spinning off here. And down to the south, we see some feathers spinning off as well, but the system is moving to the west so quickly that we don't think this portion is ventilating the circulation very well. If it slows down, then this will be a bigger ventilator, and we will expect a little more development from the system. So as it nears the islands, we do expect it to become a hurricane. Now, the time frame, storm tonight or tomorrow morning, moving to the west-northwest. We think the track is pretty good. We don't think it's going to deviate too much from this, and then becoming a hurricane near the time it makes landfall, sometime Friday afternoon, Friday evening, and then moving off into the northern Caribbean, somewhere south of Puerto Rico. Now, right now, the circulation center is just about even with Barbados and St. Vincent, and with the expectation that it'll take a little more west-northwest track, we think that anything south of Barbados is in good shape right now. The strongest winds and the largest wind radius is to the north of the circulation because it's moving very quickly. So you're going to have a lot of winds out in here over the next 3 days, so be prepared for that and be paying close attention to this because it's possible that it could develop much quicker than we anticipate. I've been watching showers out here associated with a tropical wave, showing no signs of development tonight, although there's a cluster here that's showing a little bit of an increase, but no signs of surface development from that. The Gulf and Caribbean are very quiet on the western half. Wonderful weather out there, although unusual westerly winds across the Gulf of Mexico, not associated with development. The Eastern Pacific is very quiet, so if you're heading to Mexico, it's great. Let's go back to Paul in the studio now.
Thanks to Dr. Steve Lyons, our hurricane expert. He'll be back throughout the evening during Storm Watch to...
Thanks for joining us for Storm Watch. I'm Christina Abernathy. We do have some stormy weather in the central states. We'll have more on that coming up in just a moment. But first, it's time for our tropical update with Dr. Steve Lyons.
Well, thanks, Christina, and we're monitoring a tropical depression, number 4, out in the Atlantic. Let me show you where that is and give you some details on it. It's right now still well to the east of the Windward Islands, but it's moving in quickly, and we may see some watches and warnings put up here in the next 3 to 6 hours. As a matter of fact, there's an advisory coming out at 11. We'll have to see what the Hurricane Center does at that time with it. Now, let's zoom in a little bit and get the latest information. We're going to have a new piece of information here in about an hour. Currently the winds are 35 miles per hour. That's only 5 miles per hour short of tropical storm, so they could name it, but right now, as I'll show you in a minute, it doesn't appear like it's any more organized than it was earlier. Moving west at 23 miles per hour, pressure's 1,009 millibars. Now let's have a look at it here. The low pressure center is a little bit hard to find on the satellite imagery tonight. We're going to have an aircraft reconnaissance out there tomorrow, probably around midday. They're leaving out of St. Croix. But it looks like the center's somewhere in here, and all these thunderstorms are out to the west of it. But you can see the outflow is starting to become a little more organized, and there's more persistent banding on the south side. So we're seeing a very, very slow evolution toward increasing intensity. Now, the islands are right in here. Barbados is the closest, and that's probably getting within 36 to 40 hours of reaching Barbados. So the 36-hour time frame is typically when we see watches put up, whether they be tropical storm or hurricane watches. Right now, it's not a tropical storm yet. Now, the time frame, and this could change, looks like it'll become a storm